Greenland looks simple on a map, a massive white shape between North America and Europe. But that blank space hides one of the most unusual political and geographic stories on Earth. It is the world's largest island, sitting between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans, east of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. It is also an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, meaning it is not an independent state, but it governs much of its own domestic life. Its people are Danish citizens, yet Greenland itself is not part of the European Union. It is physically tied to North America, politically tied to Denmark, culturally rooted in Inuit society, and strategically watched by major powers. To understand Greenland, you have to see it not as empty ice, but as a crossroads of climate, history, identity, resources, and global security. Greenland's scale is hard to grasp. It is larger than many countries, but most of its surface is locked beneath an immense ice sheet. That ice defines everything: where people live, how communities connect, what economies can develop, and why the island matters in climate science. The population is concentrated mainly along the southwest coast, where conditions are comparatively milder and where settlements can face the sea rather than the frozen interior. The capital, Nuuk, is also the largest city, but even Nuuk is small by global standards. Greenland's total population was about 56,583 in 2022, making it one of the least densely populated places on Earth. Vast distances, difficult weather, and limited roads mean the coastline functions almost like a chain of islands, connected by sea and air rather than highways. The human history of Greenland stretches back thousands of years. Over at least the last 4,500 years, different circumpolar peoples migrated into Greenland from what is now Canada, adapting to one of the harshest inhabited environments on the planet. These migrations were not one single event, but a series of arrivals, disappearances, and cultural changes shaped by climate and survival. Today, most residents of Greenland are Inuit, and Inuit culture remains central to Greenlandic identity. That matters because Greenland is often discussed from outside, through the lens of Denmark, NATO, the United States, minerals, or melting ice. But the island is not just a strategic object. It is a homeland with languages, traditions, hunting practices, coastal communities, and political ambitions rooted in Arctic life. Greenland also has a remarkable Norse chapter. In the 10th century, Norse settlers from Norway arrived in the uninhabited southern part of the island, after earlier settlement in Iceland. Their communities survived for roughly 400 years, farming, trading, building churches, and maintaining links across the North Atlantic. Then, by the late 15th century, they disappeared. Historians still debate the mix of causes: cooling climate, isolation, economic shifts, conflict, disease, changing trade routes, and difficulty adapting to Arctic conditions. The disappearance of the Norse settlements became part of Greenland's mystery in European imagination. But it also shows a recurring theme in Greenland's history: survival depends on adaptation, and even communities with deep connections to powerful outside networks can become vulnerable when climate and economy change together. European attention returned in new ways from the late 15th century onward. Portuguese navigators searched for northern routes to Asia, contributing to early European cartographic knowledge of Greenland's coastline. In the 17th century, Dano-Norwegian explorers reached Greenland again and found the Old Norse settlements extinct. Over time, Scandinavian presence was re-established, and Greenland became increasingly linked to Denmark and Norway, then eventually to Denmark alone. A crucial turning point came in 1814, when Denmark and Norway separated. Greenland, which had been tied to the Norwegian crown within the earlier union, was transferred to the Danish crown. From that point, Greenland's modern political path ran through Copenhagen, even though its geography and indigenous majority made it very different from Denmark itself. For much of the modern era, Greenland was treated as a colony. That formally changed with Denmark's 1953 constitution, which ended Greenland's colonial status and integrated it fully into the Danish state. But integration did not settle the question of local control. Greenlanders increasingly pushed for a political structure that recognized their distinct society, geography, and needs. In 1979, a Home Rule referendum led Denmark to grant Greenland Home Rule. This gave Greenland more authority over its internal affairs while Denmark kept major state powers. Home Rule was not full independence, but it marked a major shift. Greenland was no longer simply administered from afar. It began building institutions that could make decisions closer to the communities affected by them. The next major step came in 2008, when Greenlanders voted in favor of expanded self-government. The resulting Self-Government Act transferred more authority from Denmark to Greenland's own government, known as the Naalakkersuisut. Under this arrangement, Greenland can gradually take responsibility for more areas of governance and public services. However, Denmark still retains control over citizenship, monetary policy, security policy, and foreign affairs. This creates a layered political identity. Greenlanders are citizens of Denmark, which also makes them citizens of the European Union, but Greenland itself is outside the EU. That unusual arrangement reflects Greenland's desire for autonomy while still relying on a relationship with Denmark that provides legal, financial, and diplomatic support. Economics is one of Greenland's biggest constraints. The island's small population, remote settlements, harsh climate, and limited infrastructure make it expensive to provide services and difficult to build a broad economy. Greenland relies heavily on financial support from Denmark. Between 2019 and 2023, Danish aid averaged around 5.4 billion Danish kroner, or about 724 million euros, annually. That amounted to more than 20% of Greenland's gross domestic product. This support helps fund public services and stability, but it also complicates debates about independence. Greater sovereignty would require not just political will, but a sustainable economic base. Minerals, fisheries, tourism, and energy are often discussed as possibilities, but each comes with environmental, logistical, and social challenges. Greenland's society is often described as socially progressive, similar in important ways to metropolitan Denmark. Education and healthcare are free, and LGBTQ rights are among the most extensive in the world. But social policy exists within a uniquely Arctic reality. Small communities may be separated by long distances. Specialized healthcare can require travel. Schools must serve local needs while also preparing young people for opportunities beyond their towns. Language, identity, and cultural preservation are also central issues. Greenland is not simply copying Denmark, it is adapting welfare state ideas to a place where geography makes every public service more complicated. The result is a society balancing modern institutions with indigenous identity and the practical demands of life in the far north. Climate change is transforming Greenland from both inside and outside. The melting of the ice sheet is a planetary issue, contributing to sea level rise and changing how scientists understand the future of the Arctic. But for Greenland itself, melting ice also raises immediate questions. New areas may become more accessible. Mineral wealth may become easier to survey or extract. Shipping routes across the Arctic may become more practical for parts of the year. These possibilities attract outside attention, but they also bring risk, environmental damage, social disruption, dependence on foreign investment, and political pressure. Greenland is not just a victim of climate change, and not simply a future mining frontier. It is a society deciding how, or whether, to develop in a rapidly changing environment. Greenland's location gives it enormous strategic importance. It sits between Eurasia, North America, and the Arctic zone, making it relevant to Denmark, NATO, the European Union, Canada, and the United States. Even a tiny border reflects this geography. Greenland shares a 1.2-kilometer border with Canada on Hans Island. The island's position matters for military monitoring, Arctic access, air and sea routes, and the broader competition over polar influence. As Arctic ice changes, states are paying closer attention to northern infrastructure, ports, surveillance, and resource claims. Since 2025, United States threats to annex Greenland have triggered a Greenland crisis, underscoring how outside powers can view the island through strategic ambition. For Greenlanders, that raises a fundamental question: who gets to decide Greenland's future? One of the most overlooked facts about Greenland is its energy profile. About 67% of its electricity production comes from renewable energy, mostly hydropower. This is significant because Greenland is often framed only through melting ice and fossil fuel-era geopolitics, yet much of its electricity already comes from clean sources. Hydropower fits Greenland's geography in specific places, using meltwater and steep terrain where infrastructure can be built. Still, energy development is not simple. Remote settlements, limited grids, and high costs make distribution difficult. The bigger lesson is that Greenland's future will not be decided by one factor alone. It will be shaped by the interaction of autonomy, Danish support, Inuit identity, climate change, resources, outside pressure, and local choices. Greenland is not empty space on the map. It is one of the world's most important frontiers of self-determination in the Arctic age. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.